Shabbat Shalom. This is graduation season. Does anyone have any family members graduating? Friends or family? A number of you. Kol hakavod. Last weekend, my son graduated from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Toda Rabbi. Toda. It was a wonderful celebration full of pomp and circumstance, literally. A charge to students, a conferral of degrees, and this year something new, a protest. Actually, it was quite small, the protests. About 20 students stood up and turned their backs as the chancellor spoke. There were also some boos, but I couldn't tell if the boos were directed at the chancellor or at the protesters. A few students were escorted out of the stadium by police, but in an almost 2-hour ceremony with some 8,000 graduates, these few moments were just a blip that hardly marred the joy of the occasion. More concerning to me, though, was what happened in the weeks preceding graduation at the encampment. Chloe Astrachan, a senior from New York City, explained that she went to the encampment with a sign that said, "Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism." Of course, in that setting, she knew that she was being provocative. But the response that she got was not the response that she expected. She stood there with her sign until two young women wearing neon yellow vests walked up to her very close. They kept on inching further and further into her personal space until she retreated to the top of the library steps. "No one's allowed to talk to me because of the girls wearing the vests," she lamented. "I'm standing here hoping to have conversations. Maybe we can educate one another a bit and come to a civil conclusion, but not if they're not allowed to talk to a Zionist. If so, then what are we doing here?" So a few minutes later, a man had noticed her sign and walked up to Chloe and asked her, how does she process the loss of life in Gaza? He said, "Do you value human life?" She answered, "Of course I do," and thus began a conversation until the women in the yellow vests approached the man and asked him not to engage with her. He said, "I'm not in your group," and he continued the dialogue. What happened to Chloe has been happening on college campuses around the country and long before October 7th. You see, this is a specific tactic of the anti-Israel BDS movement referred to as anti-normalization. Anti-normalization is a policy of many anti-Israel groups not to engage with Jews, Israelis, and others who believe in Israel's right to exist. They think that engaging with Zionists will lend them credibility, and they seek to marginalize and suppress the voice of Israeli supporters. In some cases, these protesters actively try to stop Israeli speakers, including academics, from presenting. In the case of Chloe, they tried to stifle a discussion between two individual members of the campus community. This approach, by the way, is not limited to American campuses. In Gaza and in the West Bank, Palestinians who engage in dialogue with Jews may be threatened or even imprisoned, not by Israelis, but by Palestinians. That, of course, is bitterly ironic, because Israelis and Palestinians are expected to sit down and to talk to each other in the pursuit of peace. So shouldn't their supporters on campus be able to do the same? Clearly, some of these protesters do not seek peace between Israelis and Palestinians. They simply seek Israel's destruction. Anti-normalization is anything but normal, because a university, as you know, is supposed to be a marketplace of ideas where students grow by encountering challenging topics. Anti-normalization is particularly abnormal for Jews because we're a very verbose people. We like to argue and to debate, to question and to challenge. And we appreciate the power of language to build and to destroy, as we see in our Parsha. Our parsha is called Emor, which means tell or say, and it begins, God said to Moshe, say to the Kohanim, and say unto them. 3 times in the first verse, Moshe is told to speak. This Vayomer, Emor, Va'amarta, this triple crown of Emor, is not the Torah's promoting free speech. Instead, it introduces an underlying theme of the parsha, a theme that is addressed explicitly at the end of the reading in a story about a blasphemer. Now here's a recap in case you missed it. An Israelite committed blasphemy. In Hebrew, Vayikov et Hashem b'yikalel. In the Torah, to blaspheme is to insult or to disrespect God. Now in this passage, it's not exactly clear what he said. Perhaps this person used God's name without showing proper reverence. Or maybe they directed a curse at God, God's self. Or maybe they cursed another person in the name of God. Whatever he did, it was considered to be really bad, so much so that the Torah continues, any man who blasphemes God shall be put to death. The assembly shall take him out of the encampment and stone him. Now, clearly, we understand that it's not good to curse God, but this is a pretty harsh punishment. Luckily, I'm not the first to say so, or there'd be a lot of people getting stoned. Already 2,000 years ago, the rabbis restricted the applicability of this law so as to make it entirely theoretical. Today, no blasphemers are taken out of an encampment to be stoned, though I do get the sense that in the university encampment, many people did get stoned, but not of the biblical variety. Though the law remains theoretical, it still has a lesson for us. The commentary in our Chumash explains the story of the blasphemer fits Leviticus's commitment to taking words seriously. Words are ephemeral but real and have a power to hurt or to heal. Using the power of speech with its potential for holiness to hurt another is a grave offense. The Torah warns us that words can hurt, but what's happening on our college campuses is silence that hurts. The anti-normalization approach hurts Israel supporters by ostracizing them. More than that, by stifling discussions. It reduces a very complex situation to a simple binary. As Rachel Hale, a senior staff writer for the Badger newspaper, said, there's no place on campus for students who want to have a dialogue, students who are pro-Palestine but anti-terrorism, Jewish students who are pro-Israel but anti-Bibi. From what I've observed, she said, it's been very hard for Jewish students who feel like they might not feel super strongly in one direction to find an in-between gray space. If you're like me, anti-normalization, you find that this tactic is completely unhelpful and unhealthy. If you believe that anti-normalization is the exact opposite of what Jewish tradition would have us practice, then there is an important corollary that all of us must also consider. That is, it goes both ways. You see, if we get offended that anti-Zionists won't talk with us, we have to be prepared to actually listen to them. Even if in the end we continue to disagree fervently, and I certainly would, perhaps we will have grown in our understanding. Let me be clear, I don't know of any Zionist groups that actively practice anti-normalization, any groups who refuse to engage with the protesters because they don't want to legitimize them. But I do know individual Jews who say that they want to have a discussion, but who really just themselves want to be heard. That approach leads nowhere constructive. Though our parsha emphasizes lemor, amarta, say to them, and say to them, and say to them, the calling card of the Jewish people is Shema Yisrael. It's hear, it's listen, it's pay attention. After all, we're given only one mouth, but 2 ears, meaning that if we're truly interested in a conversation, we should listen more than we speak. We should seek to understand more than to convince. Chavarim, God has granted us the ability to communicate, to convey our most intimate feelings, to discuss complex thoughts. The potential of this gift cannot be overstated, but productive two-way conversations on difficult topics must be undertaken mindfully. It's a lesson that we are reminded of 3 times a day in the Amidah when we say, Elohai nitzur l'shani me'ra usfatai medaber merma, velem kalalai, the same word, nafshi tidom. God, guard my tongue from evil and my lips from lies. In the face of those who curse and blaspheme me, may my soul be silent. May I collect my thoughts and respond intentionally so that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart will be pleasing to you, God. Yud ratzon imrefi ve'agon libi lefanecha, and may one day this approach lead us to realize our dreams for peace. V'nomar, Amen. We'll continue as we return the Sefer Torah to the Aron HaKodesh. Let's rise.